So now that we've gotten this done, this sort of intersection here was kind of a critical area, but we're going to turn our attention now back up to the top. Let's switch back over into OpenGL so we can see the template 5 key, and there we can see that. Let's turn subdivision off for the object. Let's come back in. So this top area is going to be a little bit more complex. There's some really good stuff that's going to go on right here. H key. Let's establish a guide that we can use. I'm going to press the P key, and we're going to come up to the grids and guides here in projects windows under guides. And I'm going to rename guide 1, and we'll call this handle axis. And then it'll be maintained. Once you name it, it gets saved, and so you can always bring it back up. So for instance, you can see if I come up here under view, it says current guides. That's listed as the current active guide. So it's just nice to be able to have that retained. Let's come back over and focus around this area here, S key, and I want to take these and move these up along that guide right here. So we need to create the rounded end of the handle, and we can do that from existing geometry. Let's come over into face mode. I'm going to remove this half over here. We'll just go ahead and delete those, and let's rotate the view. So we want to take these and use these as sort of a lathe profile. Well, we can do that. Let's come over and dissolve those so they become a single n-gon. And we want to create a new object from that we can then lathe. But there's going to be a problem. If I simply come over here and cut that, leave edit mode, and then paste, it becomes a new object, but the bounding box is oriented to the world's coordinate system, and that will cause problems when we try and lathe it, because the lathe tool is going to try and operate on this based off this bounding box orientation, not on the geometry inside of it. So we can do something kind of clever. Let's come back over to the grid tool, click on that face, and it establishes a temporary custom active grid, and then anytime you create a new object, it's going to be based on that grid. So if I create just this plane right here, I'm holding the shift key down to constrain its size. If I then convert this into a polygon mesh, then I can take this object, we'll go ahead and cut that, come into edit mode for this square, and then we just paste, come back over, and we can delete that now. And when we leave edit mode, it's taken on the bounding box of that parent, and now it's perfectly oriented in such a way that we can use it with the lathe tool. So now all we have to do is come over and let's convert this explicitly into a polygon group, which is really just an interchange format that allows that polygon structure to be used with the Bezier tools. And we'll come over here to the lathe function, just click on the handle opposite of what you want the axis to be, and there we have that. Now we need to customize this a little bit. We want it to match up to the original geometry here. Press the P key and let's come down to Object Properties, and let's come over and add in the wing menu a complexity attribute, which we see appear down here, and then we just set that to 0. And that just means it will create one polygon per spline patch. And then we come back over here to the Object Properties. Let's increase this to 16, and you can see that increase. Now, if I press the S key, it's going all the way around, but we don't want to have full revolution or rotation. So let's set that to 0, but we do want it to go for 180 degrees. It's going the opposite way, so just come back up here to where it says 180 and put a minus in front, and that gets it to align the way we want it to align. Now, I do think I want to come up and maybe increase this to 24 segments. That gives me a bit better resolution. We do need to take note of the fact that it's still a Bezier object, so we need to convert this explicitly into a polygon mesh format now. And if I come back into edit mode, S key, there are 2 polygons here that we need to remove. So let's just go ahead and delete those. Okay, edit mode, leave edit mode, cut that, and come back to the primary object that we've been working with, and we'll just go ahead and paste that, and there we go. So now we just need to weld them together. So just loosely marquee across there, do a tolerance weld. Okay, Now I do want to come in and put one more loop right in here. Let's take a loop at this. So we've got this long handle here. Hold the Command or Control key down, press the C key. That divides it in half. Let's do that one more time. C key. And let's take this and just slide it. So Shift S, and we'll slide that close up to the top there. Z key, so we can bring back our template. And it's close enough. I'm not going to worry about it not being perfectly aligned there. Okay, so this forms a bound between the curving area and the long straight area. So let's come over here. We need to put a cut that corresponds roughly to the middle here. C key, so it's way down there. In fact, I'm going to leave that right there. Hold the Command key down again, C key, and here. So this is where I'm using a slide, but we could also just re-enable the current guide back to that handle axis, and then we can just move it. And it's governed by that handle axis that we had done. In fact, I'll take these and I'm going to move these up just a little bit because they're all being controlled by that guide handle axis that we created. Okay, H key goes into hidden align mode. So we want to take this and mirror it because the handle, there's this oblong cutout, and we need to kind of mirror what we have going on here to the other side. So let's do this. I keep bouncing back and forth to outline mode so we can do a select through. Press Option Delete so we can remove those. Now let's just take these right now, and we're going to cut these temporarily to become their own object. So we'll just paste that. It's now its own object. Let's come back into edit mode for that, H key. Now we're going to do something kind of cool here. Is 2 key. I'm going to double click on this open perimeter there. 0 key fills it. And then whenever you have a closed object like that, if you select a single polygon, there's a mirror tool for it. And you bring up the context menu and it just says mirror, and it will mirror that for us. And it's welded it and it's flipped the polygon facing direction. So whenever you have a closed object with a single mirroring polygon, this is a really fast way of handling that. Okay, so let's leave edit mode, cut that, and we need to reintegrate that back into the primary object that we're working with. So let's come over now that we've gotten that established into edge mode. We can take these edges and match them up down here to these edges. B key to bridge. Do the same thing on the other side. Grab those and B key to bridge. Let's come over here and move this up a little bit closer. S key, grab these. So I've still got that. You can see that we still have the current guide as that handle axis, which is great. We're using that a lot. I'm going to bring these up about like that. Come over here, double click this perimeter and press the 0 key to fill that. And then in vertex mode, let's come over and select this vertex. Hold the Shift key, select that one, press the C key to connect those. Now we have these details that have been put in, and they're sort of flattened out. If we look at this from the left view or the right view, just see how these are kind of flattened out there, and they're not quite matching the geometry. So let's go ahead and refine this a little bit. I need to create a grid to flatten them onto. So with the grid tool, I'm going to click 3 points. Any 3 points will always form a plane. So click here, here, and then here. And then finally, I'll just click right in the middle. That reestablishes it. Let's come over here to set units. And we're down to 0.25. Let's take it down to 0.1, and you can really kind of help really see how that grid relates to the geometry that we have right there. Let's come back in. Let's go ahead and come back into face mode and select these. And as we rotate them around, we can press Option A to flatten them onto the grid. But there's one issue that we want to take care of, is you'll notice here in the middle, it's no longer centered. And that's because the grid is off angle a little bit and it's moving everything normal to the surface, meaning a line that's perpendicular. So it's moving them kind of away from that center line. Well, we can fix that. we're looking currently in the front view through the z-axis, we can constrain the movement to the grid to be along a particular axis. And in this case, I want that to be z. So I'm going to press Shift and Z. So now when we come back into the front view and we flatten it, press Option A, they flattened, but they didn't move off that through z-axis direction, if you want to kind of say it that way. So let's do the same thing over here. Just press Delete to remove that grid. Click 1 point, 2 point, 3 point, and then the period key, just move its origin right back there. That's not strictly necessary, but I kind of like how well ordered that is. Move tool, hold the Shift key and add all of these to the selection. And I just want to check that my current guide is Z, and then press Option A, and it flattens it onto the grid, but only along the Z axis. Okay, there we go. So now when we look at that, you see how those are sort of, they're flattened on there, and it's a localized detail that maybe I'd like these to be curved just a little bit, just in a little bit better way. So let's create another custom grid that we can use for this purpose. Let's press the Delete key. What I want to do is find 3 points that I can use to create a custom grid on either side of the central axis here. So I'm going to click this point, and then this point, and then period key so we can relocate it right there and we can kind of see it. So those 3 points to find a planar region that I can use to move up and sort of manually give curvature to this area here. Now I can manually select these points and I can move them and I can sort of contour the curvature that I want, like this. Just grab these. And so I can just sort of blend that curvature down until it sort of blends. You can see I've just created that blend down into this surface here. Okay, so now we're ready to sort of patch this together. Let's come over into edge mode. I'm going to select single edge here and here, N key, C key, and let's re-enable that guide, current guide, back to the handle axis. And then I can just move these up. And I'm going to do this a couple of times, N key, C key, so that I can create sort of a patchwork. You can see here, if I go back to vertex, then I select these two, C key, these two here, C key. Okay, and then let's do one more, 2 key, N key, C key. And we'll just move these up along that guide. So you can see anytime you have a grid and a guide, the guide always overrules how the grid would constrain mouse movements. That's how it works. Okay, and here, C key, here and here. So you see, this is how I'm patching this together. This one points right to that vertex. So that's a logical point, C key, and then here and here. We'll just anchor that at the same vertex right there. Okay. That looks pretty good. In fact, I'm going to optimize out these small triangles here. I'm just going to take that point, hold the Shift key, come to that point and press the period key there and there, period. Better not to have those small triangles there and in these otherwise large polygons. Okay, now we're ready to flip this to the other side. So let's establish a grid that we can flip these across. So let's come over and put the cursor right over this edge. So this is that edge that we had created early on, okay? And we'll use that to our advantage. Hold Shift and Option Alt and click closer to this vertex. It establishes a grid that's perpendicular to that edge, but at the vertex that's closest to the click point, okay? That's how that works. So back in Move Tool and Face mode, let's come in and select, actually we'll do this in Edge mode. Select the single edge here, N key, 3 key, okay? And then click Expand Selection, which is the plus key. And then we just come in like this and select the rest. Okay, let's go ahead and copy these polygons, click to deselect, and then paste them so we've got a duplicate, and immediately just come over and do a flip along perpendicular to grid. There we go. We need to flip the facing direction and then press Option Alt A, and that just flattens them into place. Easy, easy. So let's back out. We need to weld them. So come over to vertex mode, outline, and then just do a tolerance weld. 0.001 should work just fine. Okay, and we're almost done. Let's come in here now, edge mode, double click that, open boundary, hold the shift key and double click this, press the 0 key, click outside to deselect, and in face mode, select both of these and press the B key to bridge them together, and look at that. Let's come in and add one cut here in the middle, N key, C key, and then for these two loops, I'd like to add one more bevel here that will create just a little bit of a better flow to the subdivision. When we set the subdivision to the level of 2, that creates a nice curve in here. Okay, leave edit mode. And it looks to me like there's one thing going on here, and I think I know what that is that I have some edges still as a hard edge. I saw an artifact right here. Press Command A, and let's toggle hardness, which is just Option H once, and then Option H again, toggles that off. And then when I leave edit mode, it's nice and smooth here, and I don't see an artifact. So I hope you see that using grids and guides are really powerful tools for being able to do localized work. And that is the end of part 2. Part 3, we're going to model the holes down in the spatula.